Hello, YouTubers, and welcome back to another episode of the Grandstand here on the Ohio Patriot Education Network YouTube channel. I'm, as always, your host, Arrow the Ohio Patriot. And for today's episode, we're going to do a little go-to thing. Here's what it is, which is basically 22 LR for self-defense, semi-automatic versus revolver. Which one you should use, which one is more reliable, etc., etc. There. So basically, this whole thing started about 10 minutes ago when I was on X, just, feed and stuff like that. And this chick named Carrie Sloan, who I feel, she seems familiar as fuck, actually. I can't remember if she was one of the chicks that Guns and Barbecue interviewed a couple years back now, or if she's just like some woman from like the DC Project or something. Maybe I can't remember offhand. I feel like she's a known name, known in the gun community is what it is, and I'm blanking exactly what her deal is though. But because her Twitter page here just says founder, we the female, and then it's saying instructor and some other stuff. But I feel like she's like a known entity is what it is there. But entity. Anyway, the whole point is though, she brought up this fact in this thing here. She said, when someone tells you that 22LR has no stopping power, I ask them if I can shoot them with it. Weird that no one has actually taken me up on the offer. Said there's a lot of internet quote-unquote ballistics experts that will lecture people, especially women, about carrying a 22LR for self-defense. Ignore them. Is it the most effective? No. However, some people, especially elders and those with physical limitations, truly cannot manage 9mm 380. Bottom line, if you're comfortable carrying 22LR for self-defense, carry 22LR for self-defense. Train regularly and ignore these so-called experts. And then, as this Cotes Morris guy, who I believe is a 2A lawyer, brought up, he said, my beat with 22LR isn't really stopping power's reliability. 22s are fun, but even at the range, it is apparent they tend to have more issues. I guess if you're going to do it, find some hot defense rounds that will be less likely to have problems cycling. And then Kerry brought up the point of who is not using quality ammo for self-defense. So here's the thing with that, right? So the problem is, and you can go out there and look into these ones that being made now by, CCI/federal in many cases, whether it be the uppercut, whether it be the punch, etc. there. Which, by the way, I looked into those a couple minutes ago just to check prices on that stuff. It's like $12 to $14 a box, dude, for 50 rounds. Like, that's a lot, dude. Because that you're talking about 9mm prices at that point, honestly, or even more in some cases, depending. And then you think about it, right? Like, if you're going to sit there and train with that, like, because I would assume you're going to go 500 rounds through a gun with that, honestly. And, like, that gets expensive real quick is what it is, man. Versus, people like myself or anybody else that's like poor out here can go out there and buy like a brick of 550 for whatever the price is now with that whole thing. It used to be $20 back in the day. I know now it's like double that usually is what it is. Where I've seen it now recently is what it is. So, but yeah, it's basically and I've done testing with that too for that matter, and that's why I've said before, like, sometimes it is bulk pack stuff that's the issue. Sometimes it's just 22 in general is the issue, honestly, dude, is because the way it's manufactured. It doesn't matter if it's, and that's the thing too, by the way. It doesn't matter if it's a 50 pack of something or other, or if it's a bulk ammo 550 brick or something like that, or 500 round brick for that matter even. There's going to be issues with it across the board, and it's literally because of how 22 is manufactured, which is quite literally you have the little rimfire case, and what they'll do is they'll drop a little bit of priming powder in there, and it basically like swooshes it around in the thing. So you're attempting to get it all the way around the rim and stuff like that. Hopefully it does, obviously. There's times where it doesn't, though, obviously. Or if it does, actually what will happen is after it's all primed up or whatever then, and you put a little bit of, gunpowder in there and then, of course, seat the bullet and stuff, what you end up having is, in shipping, it gets jostled around, obviously, on the trucks and in the boxes and everything else like that. And you'll have break-offs and stuff like that and different breakage in different places. Because I've had one round. I should have grabbed that round, honestly, but yeah, I had one round. It was bulk ammo Winchester, and it has about 8 or 9 different strike marks on it because I've tried to shoot that round about 10 different times, honestly, through a multitude of guns, both semi-automatic handguns and semi-automatic rifles for that matter, and not once is it actually fired through. So I'm guessing the whole thing has no priming powder at all, and is what it is there or something, where they forgot to do the priming powder on it or something in the manufacturing process or something. And then there's other rounds, like when I was doing my 1,000 round count with my TX22 a couple years back now. I had back-to-back magazines. The first round of that magazine went click, no bang. And that scared the shit out of me because I was actually carrying that gun for self-defense for about a week and a half at that time. And I was like, bro, like, that is not good. And then it's interesting because after figuring that out and figuring out that was like, an issue or whatever, I literally 180 that round to the opposite side completely, went to fire it off again, and it fired fine. But the crazy part about that is, right, like, it does not fire the first time around, yet, pulling that out there, setting it aside for the time being, put the magazine back in, fired off every other round in that magazine, which is 15 more rounds is what it is. All of them fired fine. So that's the thing. You might get a dud here and there. You might get, like I said, a bad piece on the thing, or it could even be, for that matter, depending on the rimfire case itself too. It could just be a hard case for that matter as well. So it might not be able to get striked properly the first time around or whatever then. Which again goes back to something I bring up in this episode, which is basically revolvers for self-defense. And the fact that you have a bunch of different companies right now, whether it be Taurus, whether it be Ruger, etc., making 8 and 9 shot revolvers and stuff like that in 22, man, like, I would definitely trust my life on one of those, honestly, as a primary weapon and stuff like that, especially if you're like an older person and stuff like that, dude, or even like somebody like me who has arthritis and stuff like that. Like, you could easily have a 8 shot revolver in your pocket or whatever the case be, and it's just like ding, 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 ding a bunch of times, Like, yeah, it might not be a 16 to 21 round magazine out of a semi-automatic handgun like a TX22 with a 5-round extension on it. But then again, like, who's to see all 21 rounds of those are going to go off is what it is, man. So, and that's the whole thing there is what it is. It's like, like, I know that 704 Tactical's done some stuff about that whole thing with the fighting 22s and stuff like that, and I don't disagree with it, but like at the same time, again, like, it all depends, because even, like I said, the most quality ammo out there, whether it be these new ones that they're making specifically for handgun self-defense is what it is, or whether it be CCI Stinger for that matter, I've seen people do tests with that even for that matter, and they've had issues with that fucking round is what it is, dude. Like, there was one guy, I remember, he was actually using a TX22, and I don't know exactly what the particular year was that Stinger was made is what it was, but like halfway through like the second or third mag that he was in, it just blew up the fucking gun basically. Like, didn't really blow it up completely, but it like fucked the barrel up is what it was. It actually put like a fucked up spot in the barrel is what it was there. We had to get a new barrel for that gun entirely then because it was all fucking like puffed out basically. And it's because it was either like an overcharged round or something else for that matter, where it just like basically exploded the entire round in the fucking barrel then. So yeah, it's just fucking nuts, dude, is what it is. And, or not barrel, the chamber. But yeah, like, that's what I'm saying, dude. And like, stuff like that, honestly, versus, again, even if you have like a dead round in one of those things, going back to the whole, like, possible having it on the bad spot or whatever the case, where there's no priming powder in the round itself, then in a revolver, it doesn't matter because then you can just simply, click again and it just will, cycle the chamber is what it is then, or cylinder, I should say. Like, it'll literally cycle the cylinder around and it'll just go to that next round and go pop then, hopefully. And then at that point, if you're in a self-defense encounter, it's just like ding, 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 you got at least 6-7 rounds there is what it is. Then hopefully it'll go off. And then potentially if you get back to that 8th round again, maybe that second hit will actually knock the fucking shit and they'll have enough powder there to, like, pop it the second time around or whatever then. So yeah, it really all depends, honestly. Personally, I think you're better, like, truthfully, even in a self-defense situation and stuff like that, dude, like, there is still like other calibers that's not 9mm, not 380 on the market and stuff like that. Now, granted, yes, there are lost guns out there that are chambered like 25 or 32 for that matter, but it's like, dude, I would honestly rather trust my life to a center fire cartridge like that that's not a lot of power behind it than a rimfire 22 that may or may not go off, honestly, even if it's a quality, ammunition on that one. So yeah, like, it's just, I don't know. I just like, and that's the thing, right? Like, it's one of these things that you'll learn over time, because that's the thing. I never knew how 22 was even made, and it wasn't until I talked with G-Web's Gun Websites years ago, I was selling Guns and Barbecue to those guys, that he actually explained to me how it was done, that whole thing, and how it like swooshes around like the thing for them to like prime the actual casing is what it is then. And that's what we were talking about, like breakage and stuff like that, because I was mentioning that whole thing of like having like back-to-back failures and 2 different mags is what it is then. And he was like, yeah, it's probably just they had a break off or whatever then. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Or it even could be something where it just didn't get all the way around the rim cartridge or what it was then. So it might have just been like an empty piece of like, you know, non-primed cartridge piece is what it is then. So yeah, it's just crazy, man. And the sad part about it is, though, is that people don't get that kind of thing. And then they'll sit there and be like, oh, no, you can totally use this for self-defense and stuff like that. And it's like, you can. Should it be your go-to choice, though? I don't think so, personally. Like I said, I would definitely go with a centerfire cartridge if you can handle that. First off, it doesn't really matter which one it is, honestly, dude, because you're better off with a centerfire ammunition in something than a rimfire ammunition in anything is what it is. And then secondly, if you're going to trust your life with a 22, then do it with a revolver, dude. Seriously, like you're less likely at that point to have any kind of failure is what it is, unless it's actually the revolver itself, like seizing up or something like that, which that's, you know, a gun problem is what it would be then. But yeah, my whole thing is it's like, again, and like I agree with Kerry on that one. It's like, you know, practice with the shit, dude. And that's the thing. If you're gonna do a semi-automatic handgun or something like that, dude, like 500, 1,000 rounds and stuff like that is not, you know, a bad thing to think about doing, honestly, at that point, man, just to make sure the gun's going to cycle every single time. Or if nothing else, like, even if you're going to use, like, bulk stuff in it, like, test it out, man. Make sure it actually cycles properly is what it is then. Because that's the thing, even with me, dude. Like, I know my TX doesn't, like, my TX, it loves the federal stuff, but it hates a lot of other ammunition that's on the market for 22s, specifically even, like, other fucking, like, round nose federal for that matter. Like it loves the fucking the copper jacket hollow points and stuff like that. But it hates like the fucking like 325 packs and stuff that's like the lead round nose. And then it can't stand either one of the what the hell's the ammunition now? Remington, either the Thunderbolts or the Golden Bullets. I think one time I was trying to do an entire round of Golden Bullet through that gun, and it was like 2 or 3 rounds in, it just wouldn't function at all. And then I tried to do the same thing with the Thunderbolts, and I think it got about 8 or 9 rounds into a magazine, and then it started having like functioning issues or whatever the case be, or it was like jamming up like crazy because it wasn't feeding them properly, is what it was then, or something, into that little feeder ramp. So I don't know. That might have been a gun function, honestly. It might have been both, actually, both gun and ammunition, too, for that matter. So, but yeah, like I said, it has no problem with the federal, though. With them federal 550 bricks and stuff like that, dude. So, anyway. But, yeah, I figured I'd just come out here and talk about that for a couple minutes then, because to me personally, it definitely does go to a thing of like, you know, so there's some times where you just want to have this conversation because there's a lot of new gunners out there, and there's a lot of people that need to hear this stuff, dude, because if they don't get where you're coming from and they don't get you're trying to help them in the long run, they'll never actually be able to have an option is what it is there. Now, granted, would you be better off with a full-size handgun in 22 versus a mouse gun in 25? Of course. You know, of course you would be. That being said, you know, let's go ahead and say, for instance, like Phoenix Arms, that's a gun on the market right now. Would you be better off with a 22 Phoenix Arms, or would you be better off with one chambered in 25? That's an actual centerfire cartridge. And I'd say it's probably going to be a 25 on that one, just because the reliability of 25 versus 22, you're probably going to be able to get more accuracy and more reliability with that round being a centerfire cartridge than with a rimfire cartridge is what it is then. So, now granted, that entire gun company is not the greatest. Obviously, it's like, I want to say it's Zamek. I don't think it's pot metal they use for their slides. I think it's Zamek, if I'm not mistaken, which is basically like a version of like, I want to say it's like aluminum and like some kind of like real shitty metal or something like that too on top of that. It's like the binder or whatever then. And yeah, it's not great, man. Like, it's definitely cheaply produced, but at the same time, it's like, it's kind of like everything else, man. It's basically the remnants of the Ring of Fire guns from back in the day in the California time period of the 80s and 90s and stuff like that. Even going back to the 70s for that matter, where you got, stuff like Jennings and Raven and stuff like that, what it is there, which is obviously very interesting in itself. And then, of course, you had Jennings become Jimenez, which has now been sued out of existence by that piece of shit Michael Bloomberg. And the fucking Moms Man Action stupid cunts is what it is there. And every time these other asswipes that work for Bloomberg is what it is then, man. So it's unfortunate that happened. But again, it's a company that really probably shouldn't have been on the market to begin with anyway, because the Jimenez guy, if I was interested in that little story real quick, the dude who was Jimenez, who bought out Jennings, was actually, I believe he was a foreman or like a top dude for the company somehow or whatever it was, that was like the floor guy and shit, like management type. And it was when Jennings got sued out of, or shouldn't have bankruptcy, because I believe it was some kid had gotten shot with one of their guns and paralyzed. He didn't die, by the way. He just got shot and paralyzed. Because I want to say it was, from my understanding, what happened there is it was the dad was banging some chick, I believe, who was babysitting his son then when he was out doing whatever, like work, whatever it was then. And I don't know if he told her to do this or if she did it on her own, whatever it was, but she apparently had gotten her hands on his gun, is what it is there, and did not bother to, properly do the breakdown of the gun or whatever the case be. And somehow it got ammunition into the chamber or something. And I guess because the auto sears they had on there were not properly done or something like that is what it was, or like trigger bar safety, whatever it was there at the time, was not properly done, and that gun is what it is or something. It was able to fire off, and it basically fired off and ended up hitting the guy's kid, I think is what it was, and like paralyzed his son because it hit him with like the spinal cord or something is what it was there. Family sued the shit out of the company, state of California sued the shit out of the company, et cetera, went out of business. And then you basically had Jimenez, who was like the foreman or whatever for this company, bought it out in the bankruptcy sale, which, going back in that time period of history, I believe it was an attorney general of that state of the state of California at the time, or it was some dude who was like Secretary of State or something like that, went on record and basically said he wished that they had actually, as a state, been able to put together the funds to buy out the company themselves, because they would put out of business basically at that point. But instead, you had Jimenez come around. They moved to, I believe it was Las Vegas or something like that. That's what it was there. Put a bunch of guns on the market for a few, like a decade and a half, 2 decades, something like that. That's what it was there. And then eventually, it was a couple years ago, then you have Bloomberg sue the shit out of them because I guess their guns had like unsafe issues with them too, for that matter, and stuff. And not to mention, when you actually look into those guns too, for that matter, the way that they were produced very shittily as well. And so you would have people that had bigger hands and stuff, like right on the webbing of your hand right there. You would actually have a slide bite go into the hand right there, where you would have the slide like go back and like crisp under your hands, what it was then when it was cycling. And yeah, needless to say, if you never actually experienced that shit, from my understanding, it hurts like a motherfucker. So not good at all, man. And but yeah, basically that was going on there. And then of course you had Bloomberg sue them for, I forget exactly what the deal was there. I think maybe it was that some of their guns were used in like various like gang shootouts or something like that is what it was. And like they were talking about them like trying to do like some weird like sale to gangbangers or something like that, which I don't know. I don't believe any of that bullshit, obviously, but I don't know. It was something real weird. But they basically were, it was because fucking lefty ass politics there in Vegas and shit. They were able to literally sue this company out of business, is what it is, which is absolute bullshit of itself, dude. And again, it's unfortunate that one more gun company is gone now because of these asshole anti-gun fuckboys like that, is what it is. That being said, should that gun company have been around to begin with? That's debatable, obviously. Like I said, going back to the whole story I just mentioned there. And like for me, my personal opinion on the whole thing is it's like probably should not have existed, honestly. Just because it just wasn't the greatest company, honestly, on that one. But yeah, there's a bunch of companies out there that are, they're pretty good though. And the better ones will always, it's like cream rises to the top kind of thing there. They'll always come up to the top is what it is, the surface to the top. And the ones that aren't the greatest, they'll end up, going out of business or whatever the case be, or folding, or maybe even like, being bought out by somebody else. If that be the case, then, have their stuff used as like R&D or something like that for like future gun manufacturing with a different company or whatever the case be there is. So it's like I've talked about before, dude. Like it would be actually really funny right now if Keltec and High Point did like a weird like merger and stuff like that, and then they started producing guns together. Because I think honestly, like Keltec has really good R&D, is what it is for their guns. They do not have good execution of their firearms, is what it is, man. They look like they were built in prisons, basically, is what it is. And now High Point is not much better, obviously, but at the same time, it's like if you combine those two companies together, you could have some really kick-ass shit coming onto the market, is what it is, man. And having like the quality testing and quality control and everything else like that be like way better off right now. So, but anyway, but yeah, going back to the whole discussion here and debate is what it is. 22 for self-defense. If you're going to do it, like I said, I would always suggest going with the revolver over a semi-automatic handgun. So, because you never know what's going to happen there. And the thing is, at least with the revolver, is you have the ability to just keep clicking the fucking trigger. Or I should say pulling the trigger. Sorry, I'm a little tired. But yeah, you have the ability to keep pulling the trigger until one does, bang at that point. And hopefully you're not against a bunch of people, is what it is. They're trying to take your life, whatever the case be. And it's only like maybe like one, maybe two criminals at most or something like that. And then obviously, it's good to obviously use like, clips and stuff like that, or like some kind of something or other to do like real quick reload stuff is what it is then too, for that matter. So, but yeah, if you can do stuff like that, you can get it done, like good on you. That's how it should be, man. If nothing else, like I said, like, and that's the only difference I think people would like to use semi-autos for, is what it is, because it's the convenience of being able to, do a reload real quick where all you gotta do is drop one mag and then throw another mag in there, and it's, click a slide release and you're back in the fucking fight pretty much is what it is then. So anyway, but I'm sure people will shit on Taurus after I talk about this whole thing tonight because of that whole reason. But like, again, that was not the gun's fault, dude. Like I said, all I had to do was flip that bullet 180 degrees in the opposite direction there, where it had no strike mark, and then I popped it through again, and it shot immediately is what it was then. So, yeah, it was 100% the priming powder / casing of that gun, or of that round that I was using in that gun. So, where it either had break off or there was nothing there to begin with, is what it was there for the actual priming powder around the cartridge then, on both of them then. So, which again, when you're going through thousands and thousands of rounds, like, it'll definitely happen more. It'll happen more, I think, in bulk ammo like that. But that does not mean that you're going to sit there and have, a little 50-round pack, not have the same exact issues and stuff like that. Because, again, that'll still be jostled around in shipping and stuff like that is what it is. So you could easily have, like, break-offs and things like that is what it is. So, anyway, that being said, I definitely do want to get some of that. Well, I want to get both those things, actually, both Federal Punch and CCI Uppercut, and test them in my TX22 to see if they actually cycle at all, for that matter. And if they do, like, I might seriously consider just putting those as like my go-to for that gun, then if that be the case. But again, that would be a whole thing of having, a bunch of money to put together right now and be able to buy, like, essentially a case of that is what it would be then. Like 150 pack at a time is what it would be then or something. So, but anyway, that's pretty much it for the day. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'll be back most likely on Thursday. I don't think I'll be back before that. I also do want to mention something before I leave here. So apparently there's more terrorist shit going on at these universities now. I can't remember if it was Columbia last night or if it was one of these other ones now, where you had the Antifa assholes there that are obviously domestic terrorists in this country. They were smashing the shit out of windows going into a building, and then they were taking a fucking bike lock and locking the fucking doors together is what it is there, so they can occupy these buildings now. So yeah, it's becoming a legit chassis as it is right now, dude. And it's just getting out of control is what it is, man. Like, enough is enough of this shit. It's time to just go in there and start beating some ass and arresting these cocksuckers for domestic terrorism, for seditious conspiracy, for all all kinds of money laundering for RICO Act stuff, etc., dude, and throw the fucking books at their asses at that point. 10, 20, 30 years in prison will be a nice little cooling off period for some of these fuckers, dude. And I guarantee the first one that gets charged with 10, 15, 20 prison, dude, like the rest of them are going to be like, oh shit, they're actually going to charge us now? Maybe we shouldn't do terroristic shit in this country anymore is what it is then. So, yeah. Like, things are about to change real quick in this whole thing. And like I said, I believe the pendulum is now swinging back the other way is what it is. And it'll be only a matter of time before we actually have, like, law and order restored in this nation. Now, granted, in the meantime, you got pieces of shit like Mike Johnson out there who is trying to fucking use this whole thing to basically push for legislation that would allow for, basically censorship of free speech is what it is then. And I'm not okay with that at all, dude, because fuck that guy. That guy is a known scumbag, rhino sack of shit. He is definitely embedded with the Democrats. From my understanding, he has a whole bunch of shady shit in his past right there. I guess he adopted some kid or whatever the case be, and there's been proof of that kid basically being a drug addict and a piece of shit in general. There's also apparently some weird stuff between him and his, like, biological son where they would, like, do stuff and look at each other's, like, porn search history or something like that, and like how long that they would be like watching porn for or something. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, it's a really weird story from my understanding. Like, I didn't really look too far into it beyond that, honestly. I just heard that as like the headline. I'm just like, yeah, it's fucking super weird, bro. So, because it is, obviously. But yeah, that dude's just a weird motherfucker in general. And I'm kind of disgusted about Jim Jordan, because that dude should have definitely just taken the speaker's role as it is what it was, man. Like, he'd be so much better off than Johnson's dumbasses right now. So, anyway. But, yeah, other than that, though, that's what I'm at for the day. I hope you guys enjoyed this little spiel and why, if you're going to use 22 for self-defense, do so in a revolver. Because you're more likely to actually have, like, no issues there is what it is, versus semi-automatic handgun, where you could easily have a first round failure, and then, God forbid, you're in a self-defense encounter, and you click and there's no bang, and then you don't have enough time to actually cycle out that round, and have another one pop up in there before there's somebody on top of you beating the shit out of you is what it is then. So, yeah, never a good time, dude. Never a good time. Especially, and that's, by the way, if somebody's attacking you. Could also be a situation where, it's your gun versus their gun kind of thing, and your gun malfunctions, and their gun doesn't, and now you're laying out bleeding, and they're, over top of you, like, still robbing you at gunpoint is what it would be then, and now you're, bleeding to death is what it is then or something. So, yeah, never a good thing. But like I said, even like what Carrie was saying there, like, if you're going to use this stuff, like, make sure you're, training with it, obviously. Do your due diligence is what it is, man. Always be training, always be prepared, always be vigilant, all that stuff like that. You shouldn't have to get into a gunfight in many cases in this country, but if you have to, like, you might as well be prepared for that potential gunfight is what it is then. And if it comes down to it, make sure that you're going to be able to have something reliably bang when you click the fucking trigger is what it is then, dude. It's not just a click. Like, when you actually pull that trigger, it's not just a pull trigger, click sound. It would be a pull trigger, bang sound. And you can actually get shot placement on target is what it is then, and be able to take down a potential threat to your life is what it is there. So, anyway. But other than that, though, it's been fun. It's been real. Have a good one, y'all. Stay safe, stay vigilant, always be carrying, and know who is a threat, what is a threat, etc., and how to deal with a threat to your life and your existence. Have a good one. Later.